There's going to be a couple of things I'm going to point out in this video, and if you agree, you agree. If you disagree, you disagree. If you make a response video, even better. But I'm going to point out this right here, and this right here. Those things are all going to factor and matter into the presentation. It's going to be one of my longer videos, so good Sunday morning to you all. Let's get into it.
Of all the corrupt!
CIA. Inside the CIA's black site torture room. Papers that the Pentagon and CIA were forced to declassify as part of a lawsuit brought by the victims reveal the fullest picture ever of the secret enhanced interrogation regime in the...
But wait! There's more! Hang on to your seat, baby! Cause this one's a screamer!
2 suburban Chicago police officers indicted on federal corruption charges. Chicago, nigga! 2 police officers in Phoenix, Illinois conspired to steal cash and drugs from occupants of vehicles during traffic stops in exchange for offering to withhold criminal charges or take other official actions, according to a federal indictment. Patrol Officer Antoine Larry and Sergeant Jared Snowden served on the Phoenix Police Department. An indictment returned Thursday in U.S. District Court in Chicago alleges that Larry and Snowden engaged in a criminal conspiracy from 2020 to 2022. The pair conspired to steal cash, drugs, and other items from vehicle occupants by offering to reduce or withhold criminal charges, decline to tow the vehicles, or release the cars from impoundment. The indictment states, in some instances, Larry and Snowden agreed to sell stolen drugs to a dealer, then split the proceeds amongst themselves. The indictment states, to conceal their thefts, Larry and Snowden falsified police reports so that the reports did not reflect the seized items. The charges allege. The indictment charges Larry, 46, of Bolingbrook, Illinois, with conspiracy and extortion and attempted extortion. Snowden, 34, of Lansing, Illinois, is charged with conspiracy and attempted extortion. Arraignments in federal court in Chicago have not yet been scheduled. These are the people that's supposed to protect and serve. Oh no, I got more.
A case of blue flu was going around the Chicago Police Department. Members were reportedly asked to stay home and not volunteer on days off to send a message to the mayor.
The president of the police union says they didn't send out that text message, but he doesn't necessarily disagree with it either.
He offered up a message for July 4th weekend.
Is the blue flu real? Not that I know of. I mean, it's attributed back to the FOP, but it didn't originate here.
The FOP president, John Catanzara, says he never told officers during the deadliest weekend in 2020 to call in sick.
I get why people are talking about it. I understand why it resonates with officers. You know, it kind of started in Atlanta.
The sick calls are seen by officers as a sign of solidarity.
And these are the people they hired for y'all to trust. On the deadliest day, typically in Chicago, they calling out to send a message. Really?
I'm not surprised at all.
Longtime champion for the black and brown community, Father Michael Flager of St. Sabina Church tweeted about the possibility of blue flu, saying it's, quote, unacceptable and irresponsible. Yes, the job is stressful. So is growing up in black America. Unfortunately, the blue flu is being affirmed by the toxic president of the FOP.
Maybe the president of the FOP need to sit down with some black kids in the city and find out what it's like to really grow up with challenges.
The FOP president says the union was not behind any text message, but didn't dismiss the idea, delivering this message to officers on patrol.
It isn't necessarily a work stoppage, but I'm going to ask every single member, especially with the holiday coming up, to really take a little extra pause without putting your safety in jeopardy and consider what you're doing and why you're doing it.
And we did reach out to the Chicago Police Department to find out just how many police officers called in sick this weekend. We were told to fill out a Freedom of Information Act request to get those numbers.
So, we got corrupt police and all sorts of order, abducting and a bevy of things. But then, that's strike one. So when we start talking about them doing a Rico, this is how I assess it in my brain, this big ass head right here. Let's go on with step 2.
Next generation kids! I just heard a foot chase. Dude turned right in front of me. Did he? Chop.
Respect their privacy. You taking them like you're like they hard-nosed criminals. Them kids, drugs. And they gotta be on campus. They gotta be on campus because they're selling drugs. That's fine. That's their privacy. When they go, listen to me. Listen to me. They gotta go to school. You got them on film. And that's all y'all. You ain't got time because all y'all doing is sell news. And news pop. Them kids. But they come from the radio every motherfucking day. And all y'all do is come around here and film our kids and take them to jail.
I love coming down and talking to y'all because you're so fucking controversial. You got motherfuckers selling dope in your building and killing each other out here. And you out here screaming at me because I'm doing my job. And I'm doing my job. I'm locking up bad guys.
I'm still. What about this other one we saw the other day?
Oh, it's straight.
Ollie, man. Ollie.
How are you?
Man. What you crying about, man?
What you crying for?
What you crying for?
Yeah, man.
Huh?
What you doing there? Come on. Y'all got identification?
You got ID? Where your mother at? Mother at home?
Talk to them too.
Wait, I think she's on her way down.
In the black? She on black?
If you get caught, you get caught.
How sophisticated are the GDs in terms of the money laundering?
The GDs are very sophisticated in terms of the money laundering. They have several different businesses that they ventured off into. The concerts, the music industry, which is a very good industry to veil the large sums of money that they would come in contact with. Cellular phone companies, beeper companies, clothing companies are just scratching the surface.
Fact sheet: fatherlessness in Illinois. Fatherhood is foundational to strong families, and strong families are essential to a strong nation. An absent father affects all aspects of a child's life, from socio-cognitive and socio-emotional development to academic performance and criminality. And unfortunately, the effects of fatherlessness are visible in Illinois. Fatherlessness in the United States. Approximately 18.4 million children in the U.S. live without a biological father, stepfather, or adoptive father present in the home. 23% of children in the U.S. are raised by a single parent. This is more than 3 times the world average, 7% of children raised by a single parent, and the highest rate of any country on earth. Approximately 41% of children are born to unwed mothers for women under age 30. The unwed birth rate increases to 53%. Fathers are absent in approximately 80% of single-parent homes. Fatherless children are more likely to suffer from psychological development issues, live in poverty, drop out of school, engage in school violence, abuse substances, and enter the juvenile justice system. Fatherhood and families in Illinois. 41% of Illinois babies are born to unwed mothers, totaling 54,022 births per year. 5,379 Illinois babies are born to teen mothers each year for a rate of 14 births per 1,000, females aged 15 through 19. 920,000 children live in a single-parent households, representing 34% of all Illinois children. This includes approximately 278,000 black children, 72% of all black children in the state, 266,000 Hispanic children, 40% of all Hispanic children, and 314,000 white children, 23% of all white children in the state. Educational outcomes in Illinois. 66% of Illinois fourth graders score below proficient in reading for their class level. 66% of Illinois eighth graders score below proficient in mathematics for their class level. 24% of Illinois fourth graders are considered chronically absent from school. 14% of Illinois high school students do not graduate on time. Children's health outcomes in Illinois. 581,409 Illinois children have one or more emotional, behavioral, or developmental conditions, representing 24% of all children in Illinois. 212,845 Illinois teens have anxiety or depression, representing 9% of all teens in Illinois. 48% of Illinois children and teens do not get regular exercise or vigorous physical activity. 42,000 of Illinois teens report dependence on illicit drugs or alcohol each year. Juvenile crime in Illinois. 36,154 juveniles are arrested in Illinois each year. 834 Illinois youth reside in juvenile detention, correctional or residential facilities. Child outcomes in Chicago. 341,382 students are enrolled in Chicago public schools, and 90% of those students are minorities. 25% of students test at or above the proficiency level for reading, and 21% test at their level for math. 8 out of 10 black births in Chicago are to unwed mothers. 33% of all families in Chicago are led by single parents. White students graduate from a four-year university in Chicago at nearly twice the rate of black students, 73% versus 37%. Employed black young adults aged 20 through 24 in Chicago earn an average wage of $14,000 per year compared to an average of $34,000 per year for white young adults. Nearly 50,000 Chicago youth aged 16 through 24 are neither working nor in school, which is about 15% of all Chicago youth.
They chased them down, they hunted them down, they murdered everybody that they could and made everybody else either go to exile or they locked them up in the penitentiary.
This looks familiar.
And when all that was over with, a new element rose up.
This looks familiar.
You see? And the shit started again. They were the children we passed by every day and paid no attention to, but they watched us.
This looks familiar.
We had the generation our parents came from, and we had the great personalities of their generation.
This looks familiar.
To connect with. We had something to attach ourselves to. They didn't. They were born in a state of suspended animation. They were totally disconnected and disenfranchised. They're like a planet out of orbit.
One of the most common things that I hear when I talk to cats in Chicago opposed to California is the lack of OGs, right? They say, and this is what they told me, and you can go watch my interviews with so many cats from Chicago, from BD to GDs to Vice Lords. They all say the same thing. Ain't no big homies. Ain't none. So with that being said, once you take out this wave of so-called fathers, even though there's lack thereof, bruh, you run a very high risk of it not being anybody to lead this next youth. And all they can do is pick up the pieces and continue the war, and they're going to war way worse. Why? Because they already get to see where the mistakes happen, what mistakes happen. So they're going to learn how to be better criminals. If they become better criminals, that means the police have to get more ruthless in their pursuits. But the police, the corrupt organization of the police in the Chicago PD, the kids, the innocent individuals who will be harmed by this, who really don't have nothing to do about nothing. You said jobs, Nash. Y'all ready?
This stuff employs too many people. Judges, lawyers, cops, politicians, prison guards, probation officers.
Chicago has nearly tripled per capita police spending since 1964. Data show. Now, ex-mayor Lori Lightfoot has rejected demands to defund the police department, arguing that neighborhoods want more police report. But an analysis shows Chicago is spending more on policing per person than at any time in the last half century, despite a persistent drop in crime over the last 2 decades, while the vast majority of murders remain unsolved. Y'all don't think this ain't by design? Chicago allocated about $750 million in today's dollars to the police department in 1964 from the city's general operating budget. About 3.5 million people lived in Chicago then, meaning the city funded the police rate at $215 or so per resident, adjusted for inflation. So that's basically $750 million. Pay attention. This year, Chicago budgeted $1.6 billion for its police department, excluding money set aside for police misconduct, lawsuits, and police pensions. So that's not even including the money that's set aside. Let me reread that for you. Yeah, you heard it right. This year, Chicago budgeted $1.6 billion for its police department, excluding money set aside. So that means they didn't even put it in there. Money set aside for police misconduct lawsuits and police pensions. That means Chicago is planning to spend more than $600 per resident on policing in 2020. According to an Injustice Watch analysis of census figures and police budget appropriations compiled by data scientist Forrest Gregg, Chicago's per capita spending on policing is more than double that in Miami-Dade County and Florida, which has a similar population and higher than Los Angeles, which is home to 1 million more residents, according to an analysis of publicly available data. Now, I could go through and look at all this stuff, but basically this is just showing y'all the 215 basically to 574. But we'll keep on going. Police records show violent crimes have steadily declined in Chicago after peaking in the 1990s. The rate at which people saw murders in the city has also cratered. Still, the police budget has consistently taken up about 40% of the city's general operating budget. For activists and city leaders calling on Lightfoot to cut the police budget, it's clear that the money could be better spent elsewhere. Now here's where we talk about solutions. Right now, we're paying the police to kill folks like me. That's just what's happening, said ALD Jeanette B. Taylor, 20th, one of the 6 Democratic socialists on the city's council. We can't get a nurse, a social worker, or a counselor in schools, but we can always afford more police. That's not common sense. Taylor and the rest of the caucus penned an op-ed in the Chicago Sun-Times Monday, arguing that the bloated police budget prevents the city from effectively tackling the coronavirus pandemic. Well, once upon a time. which has carved a $700 million hole in the city's 2020 budget. Chicago needs enormous public investment to recover from the pandemic, and when we sit down to hash out a budget this year, we will be faced with a choice. We can cut policing or we can slash basically everything else. The caucus wrote. Protests continued this week in Chicago. We're not finna keep on going about that. Our funding for Chicago's police department has steadily increased over the time. The number of violent crimes committed in the city has fallen dramatically since its peak in the early 1990s. So y'all can see how it's actually going down since the 90s. But let's understand this. It started to rise back up in 2015. Once the kids who were in the 90s started to grow up and become young men, it started to get to. So what also dropped since then is the rate at which Chicago cops solve murder. In 1968, police reported solving 90% of homicides cases. By 1997, the murder clearance rate was 57%. In 2017, the department reported clearing less than 1 in 4 homicide cases. An analysis of police records by NPR from October showed the murder clearance rate was even more abysmal when the victim was black or Latino. We ain't doing that Latinx stuff. I don't care what they say. Nationally, police departments around the country had a murder clearance rate of about 62% in 2017, according to the FBI. Despite its failures to find and capture most murderers, the Chicago Police Department budget nearly doubled between 1967 and 2017, going from $867 million to $1.5 billion, adjusted for inflation. So that means basically, bruh, that's what it would have cost today. That $867 million is what it would have cost today. So that's not the actual number, but that's just like saying, all right, this is what it would seem like today. This year's police budget is the largest on record. Salaries, wages, and overtime pay together take up more than 80% of the funds. There are more than 13,000 sworn Chicago police officers today, the most since 2018. So we're going to go down, and it's kind of interesting, right? Because in a statement, the Chicago Police Department says it supports investments in community-based organizations and city departments that provide youth programming, family services, drug rehabilitation treatment, and other services, but the department did not answer specific questions about cutting its budget. Meaning, yeah, we want to help, but, you know, y'all got to find our money elsewhere because this is our shit over here. Let's go to Tamar Manesha, founder and president of Mothers Against Senseless Killings, or Mass, an anti-violence community group on the South Side. She is in no rush to dismantle the police department, but she thinks the city should redirect policing dollars to grassroots efforts that stump out crime at the root. I don't know if there's enough commitment from the community yet to police our own neighborhoods, but I know that we can get together. We don't need as many police as we have now, she said. Manesha's group is headquartered at a vacant lot straddling the border between Inglewood and Auburn Gresham. The group prioritizes keeping the peace in the neighborhood without getting law enforcement involved. In the 6 years I've been here, sitting in one of the most dangerous corners of the city, I've never called 911, and I have yet to be murdered, even though this is a hot spot, she said. Volunteers run mass, but the group provides stipends to a handful of community residents to mediate disputes between other residents. The group also pays for a handful of young people to attend trade schools. Check this part out. Manesha said the city can learn from the group's approach to reduce crime and violence in poverty-stricken neighborhoods. We sent kids to trade school and gave them a stipend, and guess what? Violence dropped, she said. We're not asking the city to do anything that we haven't experimented with. We know it works. And all you have to do is pay people to police their own communities, and guess what? Everything will change. This is exactly what I was telling you people on my live streams and videos all the time. Invest back into the community and everything will work itself out. Trades, trades, trades. We don't want to do it too quickly, because when all hell breaks loose, the community will beg for the police to come back, Manesha said. But if this is done the right way, it's revolutionary. Matthew Wilborn is a youth organizer with the anti-violence group Good Kids Mad City and No Cap Academy, a coalition opposed to the construction of a $95 million police and fire training facility on the west side. He said calls to defund the police force city leaders to reimagine what public safety could look like. I think people are very scared that buzzword of defunding the police because it sounds like you're taking away, but it's all about redistributing the money into something else, he said. So anybody who says defund the police really don't know what the hell they're talking about because they never looked into it. The mental health problem in Chicago is frightening, and it has to do with shootings and misunderstandings between people and the police because they're not equipped to handle this. Wilburn's comments echo statements Chicago Police Superintendent David Brown made 4 years ago when he led the Dallas Police Department in the immediate aftermath of a mass shooting that claimed the lives of 5 officers and injured 9 others. Brown contended, "We're asking cops to do too much in this country. Every societal failure, we put it off on the cops to solve," he said. "Not enough mental health funding. Let the cop handle it. Not enough drug addiction funding. Let's give it to the cops." I actually 100% agree. Cops should not be showing up to a lot of these things that they show to. I'll just ask other parts of our democracy, including the free press, to help us and not put that burden on all law enforcement to resolve. Now, what I will say is this. If you invest back into the kids, if you give back to the community to take care of themselves, you know what's going to happen. The budgets will fall and you will not have police officers because you know what's going to happen. The money ain't going to be there. You're going to have to make cuts, and the bad officers got to go bye-bye. Being a police officer, if you go study the way in which they're paid, is one of the best jobs in America. You have a license to kill. You definitely have a license to kill. You are judge, jury, and executioner in one moment. And on top of that, you have a union. All these people who talk about cops have dangerous jobs and everything like that. If you go look at the most dangerous jobs in America, matter of fact, let's do that right now. Because I'm tired of hearing how dangerous the police jobs are. Let's go ahead and look at this. Logging workers, aircraft pilots, and flight engineers. Derrick operations in oil, gas, and mining. Roofers, garbage collectors, iron workers, delivery drivers, farmers, firefighting supervisors, power linemen, agricultural workers, crossing guards. Whoa, crossing guards. Crane operators, construction helpers. Construction helpers are construction workers who assist trade workers in the course of construction. These workers can include building equipment contractors, building finishing contractors, foundation and exterior contractors, and others. Landscaping supervisors, highway maintenance workers, cement masons, small engine mechanics, supervisors of mechanics, heavy vehicle mechanics, ground maintenance workers, police officers ranked 22nd. Most common fatal accidents, violence, and other injuries by persons or animals. Police officers are law enforcement officers tasked with enforcing the law, protecting life and property, and maintaining order. Police officers may perform tasks such as patrolling an area, issuing citations, investigating crimes, arresting suspects, and working with prosecutors on a case. How dangerous is it to be a police officer? Working as a police officer, it is about 4.1 times as dangerous compared to the average job nationwide. Based upon the workplace fatality rate, police officers have a workplace fatality rate similar to maintenance workers, construction workers, and heavy vehicle mechanics. The most common cause of death for police officers at work is violence by persons. Basically, somebody killing them. But they rank number 22. So they're in the damn grounds with mining machine operators, construction workers, maintenance workers. So I don't want to hear about none of that. You see the budgets? You hear that clip in American Gangster? They don't just say stuff for no reason. They mean it when they say that. So there's two things to weigh out, right? If they do a big old federal or state Rico, which they already have premise for. Conspiracy is one of the easiest things to say and one of the easiest things to prove. If they do that, they could do it. But I don't think they will, because of how many people are employed, the amounts of money that are given to police officers, to feds, to judges, to lawyers. It's all cyclical. So with that being said, I don't see a Rico coming. It's too much money at play. Record companies, morgues, hell, even school systems, even though a lot of them ain't going. It's too much money infused into this BS. Black death is money. Black poverty makes somebody else rich. It's amazing how a lot of people will get on here and say, hey, they pushing the LGBTQIA plus community on us with cats acting weird, but won't ever address the fact that you're wearing designer brands by people who are LGBTQIA plus. All of these designers that put on all the designer brands on your back, oh yeah, they swing for ding-a-ling, homie. So, and that's not a shot at anybody, that's just recognition. That's why you don't see me really rock anything that's designer. I come out plain stuff, but also I use it as a business standpoint. Somebody want to sponsor something, then I'll put it on my shirt. But for now, plain tees. It just makes sense business-wise. I'm a walking billboard. With that being said, bro, I don't see it. Could it happen? Absolutely it could. Would it surprise me? Nah. But only if they're ready for that next generation. But, let me know your thoughts on this one. I'm glad you spent your Sunday morning with me. But share to keep your people aware. Subscribe, turn on that bell to stay notified. And if you haven't subscribed now, join the hundreds of thousands of visionaries. We do this every day. We even help out the youth in multiple cities. We do give back to the community. Once again, not a shot at nobody. I'm not telling anybody how to run their page. This is just how I do mine. So, if you can, man, be a friend, turn on that bell, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. If there's some breaking news, we'll break it. But other than that, I'll see y'all on Monday.
What's really hood when I'm through the hood? Nothing be said, we got it overstood. The team fed, yeah, it's really good. Put that on everything, bro, you're never good. What's really hood when I'm through the hood? Nothing be said, we got it overstood.